My name is Ayoade. I'm a senior data engineer at Bredge LLC, where we help organizations with their data stuff, right? And a few things about me. I love data quality, right? I love working on projects that improve data quality because now we have ChatGPT, Gemini 3.0 just came out. We have, cloud and the rest. And organizations are also looking like, oh, we want to start building AI systems and all of that. But just like we know it, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have quality data, then your AI models will not be able to perform as expected. So this is what basically drives me to help organizations to make better data-driven decisions. And outside of that, I'm building behind the data. What is behind the data? You'll see shortly. Then I'm a data analytics mentor with Career Foundry. It's an edtech company based in Germany, right? So for today, we'll be looking at how we leverage AI for documentation for one of our clients, and then the solution that we are able to achieve from them. So when I talk about behind the data, one of the things that we are doing at behind the data is that we are sharing stories of experts in the data field. How did you come to be in the data field? What have you learned? What are the problems that you face while you are coming up? And then how can you help upcoming data folks grow? So that's what we do on this newsletter. And it's not just to Nigerians, right? It's worldwide. So if you want to see past issues, you can scan that QR code and subscribe, right? Now, I'm going to ask a few questions and so that I can understand my audience. If you've done anything that involves you writing about what you have done, can you raise up your hand? You've done something, maybe build a dashboard, and then you write a report about it. Can I see your hand? Okay. You design something, and then you write about it to learn from it. Can I see your hand? Okay, thank you. You post on LinkedIn about something that you have learned. Can I see your hand? Awesome. You give somebody a direction to get something done. Can I see your hand? So basically, all of us knows what documentation is. So it's a guide on how to implement something that you have worked on, right? So I have here that documentation is the guide for your data project, right? And it's not just only to data projects now, right? It's literally around everything. You're a software developer, you write code, you comment your code. Your commenting is sort of like a documentation. You're a graphic designer, you've done something, you did brand's identity. All of those things that you are doing is some sort of documentation, right? But imagine you just got a new device and that white paper that used to be there is not there. How do you go about setting it up, right? Now let's bring it to something that we have in every Nigerian home, maybe StarTime or GoTV. Imagine you bought that and that white paper is not there. On how to install it, on how to search for channels and all of that. It becomes a problem, right, for you to be able to use that. And that is what happens when your data project does not have a documentation, right? Now, there are different kind of documentations, like I said, but for this session, we are going to focus on data projects because data cuts across every aspect of the business, from marketing to sales to business analysis to customer acquisition, name it, right? Data cuts across everywhere. So there are three levels of documentation that I will talk about. The first is the project or the high-level documentation, right? For business analysts that are in the house, you talk about BRD, which is business requirement document. That thing states what is expected, when it is expected, and how it should be done, right? So when we are talking about data projects, the high-level project basically talks about why are we doing this project, who is the owner of this project, what business context is this project dealing with, and how will data flow basically from end to end. And this kind of projects or documentation can be hosted on your GitHub pages, Confluence, Azure DevOps, Wiki, and the rest like that. Now, when we talk about process of workflow, this is something that designers are familiar with. There is something called low fidelity design, right? You are not adding flesh. It's like the architectural design that they have not plastered cement and paint and all of that. It's just looking skeletonish. That is what the process flow or workflow documentation basically is. It explains how the project is built, what testing we did, and how it is deployed, right? This kind of project usually goes, or documentation usually goes to the repo that this project is hosted in. And the last one is the user-facing documentation. So, some of us here are software developers. Imagine you want to integrate maybe Flutter or Paystack into the app that you are building, and there is no proper documentation on how to do that, right? Or you want to impute weather data into that your e-commerce data set to say, oh, is weather affecting our sales or weather is not affecting our sales? Which time of the year should we be selling this product? Now, if you look at it, why is every e-commerce platform doing Black Friday in November, December? Why can't they do it in March? Why not February, right? So you want to get external data to support the internal data that you have. We need to have like a proper documentation that can help us to understand that. And that's what the external documentation basically provides for us. It helps the business user to see what is happening. When you build a dashboard and there is that small icon that when they mouse over, they can see, oh, this data set is gotten from Kaggle, is from this year to this year and all of that. Those are some sort of documentation as well, right? Now, why does documentation matter basically? For engineers, it helps us to speed onboarding process and handovers. Now, one of our clients, we actually had to leave them. I was onboarded like without any process. They just sent us the contract, my CEO signed it, and I was assigned to the project. And for a month and 2 weeks, I had to start figuring out what is what, when there was supposed to be like a proper onboarding documentation, but they did not have, right? And that basically just, take away what we could have done for the organization. Then, for analysts and data scientists, they want to understand why am I using this column? What does this column mean, right? Where is it coming from? If I'm putting, maybe I'm doing house price prediction in Ilorin now, right? I need to know what room is. The room, does it have AC? Is there like POP in the room? Because those are like the things that we are using to price housing now. If your house does not have POP, it's cheap. But if it has POP, it's expensive, right? So I need to get all of those details, and documentation can help me to understand what those columns basically means. Another way we can describe documentation for data analysis and data science is what we call data dictionary, right? There's a document that explains what each column of your data sets means, right? Then for business stakeholders, these guys, they just want to make decisions. So they don't have time to sit down with your SQL query and start reading it. And that's why you spend maybe 5 hours building a dashboard. And then you hear, can we export it to Excel? Because that's what they understand the best. But if you want to help them to build trust in the data that you are giving to them, it's best to have a documentation that thoroughly outline what you have done and how you come about that decision. Then for third-party users, basically just like I explained, you want to integrate Paystack into your platform, you need to have a proper documentation to do that, right? And then for organization as a whole, it helps to preserve institutional knowledge. Now, what do I mean? Take, for example, you are working with Money Points, right? You are maybe like the first software engineer that they hired. So you basically, or you practically set up most of the frameworks that the new ones are now using. So now imagine you won, maybe not even won, you decided to japa because you are tired of this country, and then you left. What do you think would happen to the software architecture of Money Points? They will not be able to move forward because if problem happens, there is only one person that knows it, and that's you. And you are probably in Canada where our 10 a.m. is your own 9 a.m. in the morning. Our 10 p.m. is probably your own 9 a.m. in the morning, right? So when you do documentation, you set up help organization to prevent the need to be chasing you up and down, right? Because, they are not paying you anymore, so they should not have access to your time again. And then it helps us to minimize the risk of governance. What do we mean by governance? It helps us to know, oh, this is this data, this is what we can use it for. This code that I've written for Money Points, I cannot post it online and say, oh, I was working on something amazing today, right? Because you are literally just breaching the inside trade for Money Points, right? Then for our case study, I joined this particular client, I think around May. And when I joined them, so it's an e-commerce company actually, right? And it's in US. why, like, really, really growing. They deal with hair and skincare products, right? So when I joined them, they are using DBT. I will explain what DBT is shortly. Now, the first thing I noticed was that most of their tables, right, does not have description. So most times when they give me tickets to work on, I will need to talk to like 5 to 7 people to even first understand what I want to work on before now working on it, right? And along the line, I was seeing some things that could be improved. Again, I have knack for data quality. I don't want to work with you and then when I leave, you are now calling my founder and say, oh, that your boy that you sent to us did amazing work, but we need him back because we cannot continue the project without him, right? And I always try to run away from that. Now, one day, again, this is the problem that I have been seeing. And I was telling the person that I was reporting to, but it felt like it was not a problem until one day when one of our technical stakeholders, I love working with technical stakeholders, they understand the jargon that you are writing in SQL and they can call your bullshit, right? But you see those non-technical ones, just use English and bubble them, right? So now this guy said, oh, we want to work on seeing if the coupon codes that we are giving out, if people are actually using it, right? So that maybe we'll stop giving out coupon codes. And because they have like a third-party platform that they use for coupon code claiming. So they are paying maybe about $800 to $1,005 per month, right? So multiply that times 12 in a year, right? So they want to know this small money, should we be saving it or we should continue doing the coupon code, right? And one of the analysts was looking through the table and there was a Slack message. I had to actually remove it. And said, oh, this table, what does these columns, what do they mean? Because I don't understand what they mean. The whole team started running Reta Skater because this project is very sensitive. They need to roll it out before this last update that was held in the US, right? Before the veteran holiday, right? We need to have that project active so that we know for veteran holidays, we are not doing coupon code or whether we are doing it. So now, after that, we're jumping on different meetings, different teams, trying to answer the questions of what do these columns, what do they actually mean? But nobody could answer that. The guy that did the table had left, and I don't think he's even in the state anymore, right? Maybe he has relocated and stuff. So after the whole up and down, right, we came up with 3 conclusions. First, we want to make documentation complete. So no table in our database, we go without documentation. So you tell us what the table is about, the columns in it, what do they mean, how do you arrive at those columns, do those columns conform to the business context that that particular table is meant to solve, right? And then we want to ensure that as much as a table we have as many columns as it should or would, we want to ensure that every single column is actually documented, right? So you don't leave tomorrow now and somebody is asking me what does sales date means, right? Because dates are very dubious. I was working on a project for an edtech that is focused on kids education, and they want to know how long does a particular user spend on the platform before logging off. So there is a table that has start time and end time. There is another table that they are using to store activities that also has start time and end time. So by the definition of the table, you would have thought that the start time and end time in the activities table is the one that should help us know how long a user is actually spending. But unfortunately, it wasn't. It was from the other table. And I used the one from the activities and submitted the report to the stakeholders. And they were happy. Oh, yeah, people are using our platforms and all of that. I just decided to say, let me second check what I've done before presenting this to the stakeholders on Friday. I've sent them like the email, right? But the responses I was getting shows that, oh, these people are happy. So I just decided to just check and reach out to the software team. And they said, oh, the start time in that particular table does not mean when the user actually starts reading a story or anything. It means when the user opened the app. So which means that you can open an app now and just leave it there, maybe like for 5 days. And the system will be reading it that, oh, you are reading stories for 5 days, right? These kind of little things cause a lot of problem. But, we don't want that to happen. And last but not least is that we want to automate everything. Now, one of the questions I got when I brought about the idea of let's automate everything was, how can you be sure that the outputs that we are generating, if we automate everything, will actually be correct? And that's what we are going to work on today, right? So, how do we plan to go about it? First thing is that this is what the company is currently doing, right? Or was doing, because we've changed it now, right? So, we are using manual approach. Imagine you have a table that has 10 columns. So, you open Excel sheet and then write name, description, right? And then maybe data type and then sample data. So in the name, you write the name of the table. In description, oh, this table is holding information about our customers, sample data that you should be seeing in this table, and all of those things. That was what we were doing before, but not like using Excel. I'm just using Excel to explain. So, but I now brought another approach that, okay, since we are using DBT, now, what is DBT? So, who is familiar with Python here? Python. Anyone knows Python here? Okay. Who have used pandas before? Pandas. They have not used pandas. Okay. Thank you. So now, awesome. So pandas is for cleaning data in Python, right? So DBT is for cleaning data in SQL, right? Now, your traditional SQL, there is no way for you to know which table is relying on which table, right? So which means that if I log into a database now, I can delete a table without knowing that there are other tables that are connected to it, right? But that's what DBT is helping us to do. So it helps us to create a lineage graph that says, oh, this table, one column from this table is connected to another column in another table. So that way you know that if you delete a particular column, these are all the tables that will be affected, right? So that's what DBT basically about. It allows data analysts, data engineers to be able to create tables that you can track the lineage and then also infuse some data quality. Now, talking about data quality, right? How do you ensure that the information you are storing in your table is actually correct? You can only do the traditional set the not null, the unique and whatnot to your table. But how do you set that a column should have between a particular value and a particular value, or a column should not have more than anything? These are the things that DBT is basically helping us to do, especially when we are talking about documentation, right? So we could not use this approach anymore because, it's failing, and then we decide to opt in for the ones that would allow us to build some sort of security check. So what does that mean? Who is familiar with GitHub here? GitHub. Okay, awesome, right? So now GitHub is where you host your code. Actually, all companies, right, host their code. That money point app that you're using, that WhatsApp app that you're using, every single software that you're using, the code is hosted on a Git platform. So let me not say GitHub now because GitHub is not the only one. There is a Gitbucket and then Bitbucket out as well, right? But every organization, as long as you have more than 2 people in your company, right, you need to have a Git platform. So all of your codes are on that platform, right? And when Akin writes his own stuff, he pushes it there, right? And when Tolu writes his own stuff, he pushes it there. When Mayowa writes her own stuff, she puts it there so that the whole code at the end of the day is now in one place, right? So you can set some sort of security check when someone wants to push something to your GitHub, right? And it's called Git commit, right? Which we are going to look at when we get there. So what are we doing, right? Because when you do, so The normal step that you follow when you want to push something to GitHub is you have modified the file, right? Maybe the analyst reach out to you that, okay, so now the table that you have built for me, right, I need you to add one more column. I need you to add the sales date so that we can track how many sales are we getting per day, how many sales are we getting per week, how many sales are we getting per hour, right? But now, for them to be able to do that, that column is not available in their table, right? So you added that column to the query, and then you save it. Now, when you save it, you want to push it in such a way that it will now appear in your organization production environment, right? Because for every developer, we are working in the dev environment or the staging environment. It is until when the thing that you are done, right, or that you have written is actually certified, that is when they now bring it to the production environment, right? Example is Cloudflare, right? Got knocked off, like I think that was yesterday or 2 days ago, right? Because somebody pushed what they were not meant to push to production, and then it knocked their entire server offline. And then a lot of organizations felt the impact. Same thing with AWS that happened about 2 weeks ago. Their MongoDB cluster got a wrong configuration, and then bam, it knocked it offline as well. So that's why organizations are very stringent on what goes into the production environment, because before you know it, it's your client that are going to be affected. So because Git stores information, right? You have modified what you want to modify, and then now you do Git add. What Git add does is that particular file that you have modified, it takes it and puts it into a bucket, right? So that when you are ready to push that bucket, everything that is inside that bucket is what will be pushed to your GitHub repo. So we want to get the information that is inside of that Git metadata and use it. That would help us to identify which model have been modified, right? Then, from that model that have been modified now, we want to pick it and say, oh, check this model. Does it have complete documentation or not, right? If it does, then we go ahead and say, okay, you know what, allow this person to send this thing to GitHub. If not, we then take some information about that particular model and send it to Gemini AI. This is where the interesting part is. Who knows about prompt engineering? Awesome. So this is, like I said, the most interesting part and then the hardest part, because these LLMs can be, silly at times. So we're doing a lot of tweaking to get exactly the information that we need. And after that, once this is generated, the next thing we did was to ensure that the data engineer that has worked on this model and the business stakeholder, that is maybe the analyst that is requesting for it now, right, sit together to review this documentation and ensure that it is actually up to the standard that is needed, right? And last but not least, we now allow this guy, to commit his code. So this is basically what the pipeline looks like, right? And we are going to break each of these sections, right? We are going to break them out and see how the codes are functioning, right? So the first thing is that we want to find the models that have been modified, right? After that, we want to check this model, does it have complete documentation or not? So if it has complete documentation, just go straight and allow the user to push their code to GitHub. But if not, even if it is just one column out of 83 columns that is missing, we want to have AI generate that documentation for us. So if any column is missing, send us to Gemini. Let's feed the context that we have gathered, right? Let's feed it into Gemini. Let Gemini generate the documentation for us. Let's save that documentation, and validation then sort of comes in, and then we can now finally push to GitHub. These 8 steps took about a month, right? Because we're testing with different models to be sure that, okay, this thing is cutting across every part of the business that we can think of, right? And then finally, right, this is a script on its own. This is on its own. Checking for documentation gap is on its own. sending to LLM, getting the feed from LLM, and then, generating the missing documentation, they're all together in one script. Validating, that one is manual. So you check it by yourself. I mean, I can't let AI do everything for you. Then finally, you send to your Git. So to join 1 to 6 to make it automated, because imagine I spend 2 hours to write a code, and then I'm spending another 1 hour 30 minutes to confirm that the documentation of that table is completed. I can just go ahead and be looking at that documentation itself, right? So to ensure that you are not running each of these things one after the other, we now brought in pre-commit hook. So what this does is that immediately you press your git commit, this guy checks if every single thing we want this pipeline to do, if it's in place. If it is not in place, it will tell you that, hey, this thing is, it has failed. You need to go and check this information. And we'll see all of these things, in practice. Now, one of the things about being a data engineer, that also does the analytics side is that it is a dirty job, right? Because I mean, imagine the plumbers does not, go inside the ground and drill out water for you. How will you drink, right? But when they come out of that hole, like, they all look messy. So it's a dirty work because we ensure that the dirtiness of the data does not get to the fancy dashboard that the stakeholders are looking at, right? So the first part is, detecting the modified models, which I'm going to, switch to my system now. I gave this outline, right, on how to actually set up for this workshop. I'm not sure if you got this guide, right? But if you did not, the link is, probably going to be shared afterward, right? But this is basically like the outlines to set up a complete DBT project that we are now going to leverage AI on. So the first part is basically you are setting up your database, you are setting up your Postgres. So Postgres can also act like a data warehouse. Who knows anything about BigQuery, Snowflake, Amazon Redshift, and the likes? Has anyone used Snowflake before? Okay, so they are all databases basically, but they are hosted online. So they are not like your MySQL that you have on your system or your Microsoft SQL Server that you have on your system, right? So they are hosted online, and then you pay as your organization data is growing. But Postgres has that feature as well. It has the feature to also work like a data warehouse. So that's why we are using Postgres for this. Then you create, your virtual environment. You clone this repo so that you can download this data that I have here. So this is an e-commerce data set, basically, right? It's loading. Then you initialize the DBT project, you set up your config, all of those things, every single step from beginning to the end to get a working DBT project, right, is here. Now, let me quickly, does this look familiar at all to anybody? Eh? This is basically your SQL, right? And that's what I meant when I say DBT is like you are cleaning your data with SQL, basically, right? So this is basically what it is. Now, instead of doing your from and then writing your table name directly, right? DBT says, is using a source macro that will connect to your warehouse and then pick this table at the end of the day, right? And then, we are selecting all of these things. It's basically a CTE, which is, one of the ways that you can write improved query in your SQL, right? So that is basically what all of these things. And if you look at this, right, this is our documentation. This is our documentation right here. So I have the order item refund ID. I wrote the description about it, that, this is a unique item for each refund of the event item, right? So that way, I can know if this guy should leave our organization tomorrow now. I have a way of saying, I know the things that he has worked on, right? And you have that, like, till the end of the whole thing. Now, the part two of this is now setting up your Gemini, right? Because we need API key. So it's actually free. So you get that, and then you can do your testing of your Gemini key, and you should be good to go. So I'm going to head over to my repo. I think this is AI Docs Quora build, right? Okay. So it's two ways. Let me first clear all of these things, right? An environment variable. Don't worry, you can look at the environment variable. I will remove it when I'm done. So I've set up my own models basically, right? And every other thing that I need. So I'm going to go ahead and activate my virtual environment. Oh, it's activate. Okay, I need to change directory. Okay, so let's cd back into AI_docs. Okay, so I think I'm good, right? Now this is my model right here. This is not you. This is my model. Basically, everything that I have here, I've also like give a description of how to set them up in that repo, right? So we can see the staging. So the staging is like I'm connecting to the source and I'm not doing anything there. No cleaning or whatsoever is done here. I'm just taking the table as it is, like raw. So basically, what DBT allows you to do is that it sort of turns you to a data engineer, right? You know that that data is coming into your, maybe from your CRM. The data engineer now has, dump it in a MySQL database or maybe a Postgres server or whatnot. Now you connect directly to it without doing any cleaning. That's what the staging basically is. Then your intermediate is where you are doing some sort of cleaning, right? Here now, what I did here is I connected to two tables or three tables basically, and then joined them all together to form, just one single output, right? But let's go to where the work is. So we are going to use the order stable, basically. I think, yeah, this is good, right? So now, this is the complete documentation for this thing, right? I'm going to run something now so that we can first check if this thing is, is correct. So let me do this, add a space and save this. So I've added a space and I've saved this model. So what I'm going to do is that I have the code here. So great. So let me just do bash, right? And then, drag this dude here, basically. And let's run. So what is it saying? It does not find any updated model. Why? Because I've not done git add. I've not added this model that I updated now. I've not added it to my git metadata. But if I do git status to check things that have been modified, you can see that it's showing that, oh, I went through all the files I have here. This is the one that I have modified, right? Now, if I do git add, I'm saying that you should add this file now to the bucket. So right now the bucket is empty, but I'm saying you should add that file to the bucket. If I do that now, and then check this, you can see that this thing has changed from green to orangish yellow, right? Now it's showing that this file is in the bucket. The only thing that I need to do now is send this file as it is now, send it to my GitHub, and then I wait for my team lead to review what I've done and then merge. But now let's go back and run this and see if this guy will pick what we have modified. Now we can see, right? He's saying that, yeah, I mean, that's an error from that thing. DBT found, yeah, it's normal. Now, where are we? So here, he's saying that I can find the model that I have modified. This is the model here, staging orders. You have edited it, right? Now, the next thing that it's supposed to do is, what's this? Error, paging schema. Oh, yeah, I have to. Staging item schema. Let me delete this thing. This is what is causing the error. Yeah. Great. So let me go and edit this guy again. Staging orders, remove the space, save this, and then let me clear. And then git, yeah, okay, git add, and then let's run this again, right? Yes. So git status. So I have item refund. Okay. So let's now save this back. Then do that git status again. Great. So now git add. And then let's do this bash. Now, let's go ahead and see what is happening, right? So what are we doing basically is that it has found out that we modified this model, right? That's what it has done. We have modified this model, and it can detect that we have modified it. Then it now did two things. It ran the DBT compile and then the DBT build documentation. So let's start with the basic setup. So this is our line of code, right? What we are doing here is basically saying that, so this is the first part. This highlighted line is the first part. And what we are doing is we are using the batch script to first identify which models are inside of this Git metadata, which help us to tell that, oh, this is the information that we have modified. Now, once that is found, once we have a documentation that, a model basically, that have been modified, the next thing is that we run dbt compile. So what dbt compile will do is this. Let me go to target, right? And then look at compiled, staging, and staging orders. Now, is what we are familiar with in your normal MySQL environment, right? You do select star from, and then your table name, and then the whole thing that we have, right? So that thing that has this thing here has been converted to this that your database will understand, right? So it's not taking it as it is like that. This is what it converts it to, and then send it over to your database. Now, what it had identified is that when we do dbt compile, dbt will generate this code, because this is the code that will go against your database. And then when you do dbt docs generate, what this thing does is that it helps you to create a documentation website for your system. Now, I can open that documentation website by doing docs, dbt docs save, right? Now, this is a very simple, straightforward documentation website for my model, right? If I come to my, right, this thing is bright. We can see my staging, right, and look at staging orders. All those descriptions that we have written, this is them here, right? We are saying that this staging order is, staging model for customer orders, including the information that are there. Then all of the columns, they have their own description, right? But you can see here which model, which other table is using these staging orders, right? It's showing us that this is it. Which table in your database is this file here? Is it depending on? It's letting us know that this is the thing. Now, the compiled version of your code, this is it. This is the source, this is the compiled. This compiled now is what dbt will run against your data warehouse. So if you are using Snowflake, you are using BigQuery, you are using Redshift, you are using Postgres, dbt automatically handles that and converts this thing that we have in source to what can run against your specific data warehouse, right? And now if we open this thing here, this is the lineage graph, right? What we can see here is that this is staging orders, right? This table depends on it. This table depends on this one. So which means that if anything should do this staging orders, that fact orders is not going to work again, right? Or if one column from staging orders that is referenced here is missing, it means that this model is dead. It also means that something is going to happen to this one as well, right? So this is the lineage graph that DBT helps us to create so that we can see how our informations are relying on one another, right? And this website is the internal documentation for your team. So even your stakeholders can access it and see what your model is all about. What have you done? Where is it coming from? Look at this one as well, right? Product also goes to the product, and then we have it go to int others are enriched, right? So that is how your documentation basically sort of works. Let me stop this. Right, so that's how your documentation works. So when you do dbt docs generate, what dbt will do is that it will go into this, your YAML file, right? This thing, it will go there and look at each of your columns and the description that you have used for them. So basically what it does is that it helps you to build a website where these things that you have here can actually be viewed by literally anybody within your organization. Well, depending on where you're actually hosting your documentation, right? So what we are going to do now is, this one here, we are going to knock it off, right? We'll knock it off. So which means that right now, this model right here is missing one documentation, right? So the documentation is not complete. Now what we are going to do is, we are going to now look at how we are going to use AI to generate that particular missing documentation, right? So we've tested this part. It has helped us to identify the models that we modified, the first thing, and then it has also helped us to do this dbt compile and dbt whatnot. That's the first part. The second part is now to find the information that are needed, right? Information that are needed. So I'm going to run this batch script again so that it can help us to regenerate our documentation. Now, if it helps us to regenerate our documentation, then we can find out that that website now has missing documentation in it. CD dot, and then let's do. So I want to open that documentation website again, right? And then let's go to the orders again, right? Staging orders. The inventory thing that, hey, what does this particular column, what does it mean, right? So this is like an example now. So let's go back. Now that we have that, and we have identified that, oh, there's a missing column, the next thing we want to actually do now is to find the documentation percentage script, which is now the part 2, right? Which is now the second side. So we have identified the models that are missing, right? And then we have updated this metadata, which is now showing us here that this particular column is missing description, right? So the next thing now is for us to check this documentation percentage level, right? Now, in our script here, it's a very simple line actually, right? What we are doing is that we set the threshold to be 100%. So data quality is not something that you force on any team or any organization. So let me start from there, right? You need to start it small, small. So let's say for your team now, you are just starting. For this team, for me to put the documentation level at 100%, right? So it can be, oh, out of 10 columns, we want to ensure that 5 are documented. That 5 should give anybody that is coming an idea of what that table is basically doing. It has been updated, right, from the bucket. And then we are now using these 2 files, which is these 2 files that are here. When we did your table is currently looking like in your database, that is what catalog.json is storing. Actually, because one of the things that you need to understand, especially when you are doing workshop, is why am I doing this, right? Can I even see what the problem is before I start implementing my solution, right? So I'm going to copy this name. Then let's go into this catalog.json file. I'm going to JSON sort document. Okay, it carried me to the end. Ew. So this is how this thing looks like right now. So this is this thing, right? So let me search for that model. So this is the model here, and I'm going to collapse this and take this whole thing out of here. So let's come to this file. This is catalog, and I'm going to paste this here, right? Now, if we look at this, we can see 5 columns. This is 1, this is 2. Let's be collapsing them. This is 2, this is 3, 4, 5, user ID, the staging orders. So let's go back to this catalog. So now this is all of this, right? This is all of this. If you look at this thing, those are the columns that we have there. Order ID. Let me send this to the left side, split to the right.